introduction, and good afternoon to all of you. I would like to express my appreciation to the American Enterprise Institute for inviting me to this conference on Puerto Rico policy after Hurricane Maria, and to my fellow Oversight board member, AEI resident scholar Andrew Biggs, for his leadership and support in facilitating this opportunity. When I spoke here 6 months ago, I briefed you on the significant progress the Oversight Board has made in fulfilling our mandate under the Puerto Rico Oversight Management and Economic Stability Act. I told you of the enormous amount of work that had gone into marshaling and putting in place the resources we need to do our job. The assistance and guidance we have provided the government of Puerto Rico officials so that they could do their job, and the very concrete result of that sometimes smooth, sometimes challenging, but always productive collaboration. The certification of a 10-year fiscal plan for the Commonwealth, as well as fiscal plans for a number of its covered instrumentalities. There are months of hard work by dozens of very best professionals in the world working in unison toward the basic goals set forth in Promesa of building a path to fiscal stability, economic growth, equitable restructuring of the government's debt, and restored access to capital markets. And then came Maria, and Maria turned everything upside down. I will spare you the description of the devastation of this worst in 80 years hurricane. Suffice it to say that its aftermath is forcing everyone in Puerto Rico, citizens, small business, large corporations, government, not-for-profit, everyone to rethink everything. The Oversight Board is no exception. The minute Maria was done, we knew we would have to adjust our policies, procedures, and work plan to a new reality if we were to be successful in implementing Promesa's mandate. So here are the actions we took immediately in response to the challenge. Right after the hurricane hit, the board authorized the government of Puerto Rico to reallocate up to $1 billion of its budget for emergency funding to recover from the hurricane effect and to ensure it had resources to begin immediate emergency and recovery efforts in anticipation of federal funds. On October 4th, the board withdrew the litigation it had initiated to enforce in court the government of Puerto Rico's compliance with certain measures in the certified fiscal plans and postponed the implementations of any furloughs measures for at least a year. We have been active here in Washington advocating for the necessary resources to support Puerto Rico's recovery, critical rebuilding efforts, and necessary liquidity to maintain services. To that end, I have written to the President, we have written to the President, the Secretary of Treasury, and the congressional leadership formally requesting that support pursuant to Promesa. Interestingly enough, just today, this morning, we were informed that the Solicitor General will be defending Promesa before litigation that is before the court. So we're very thankful to the government, to the executive branch. Specifically regarding liquidity, we have collaborated with the government of Puerto Rico to provide short-term, 1 quarter, and medium-term, 7 quarters liquidity estimates in light of the revenue shortfalls that the Commonwealth is experiencing, and to address the monies that will be needed to advance rebuilding efforts. The board has initiated contract review policy pursuant to Section 204(b)(2) of Promesa to ensure utmost transparency in all contracting processes. And as we announced the week before last, we asked the Title III Court to approve the appointment of Noel Samot as Chief Transformation Officer of the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, PREPA. God willing, upon confirmation by the court, Noel's task will be to marshal the necessary resources to speed up the rebuilding of the island's electric infrastructure devastated by Maria, and lead the transformation of PREPA to make Puerto Rico's energy sector more reliable, cost-effective, and resilient. In the immediate future, we will focus on the following. First, in light of Puerto Rico's new reality, we need to revise the fiscal plans we had previously certified for the Commonwealth and its governed instrumentality. At our 10th public meeting last week, we issued parameters for revising those plans, which I will review in a minute. We are committed to collaborating with the government to promptly revise these plans under a new work schedule that includes listening sessions and new deadlines. The Oversight Board will continue to advocate for Puerto Rico here in the Capitol as it joins meetings with the administration and Congress. We will continue to work on liquidity monitoring to ensure responsible stewards of federal funds and monies of the people of Puerto Rico, and that necessary actions are taken to avoid interruptions in services. Hopeful of having a court-appointed Chief Transformation Officer at PREPA soon, the board will be redoubling its efforts to work with the government and all stakeholders to restore electric services as soon as possible and to reform the energy sector. And fifth, our work towards restructuring the debt as soon as possible, one of the main objectives of Promesa, will continue in earnest. The certified fiscal plans for the Commonwealth and those for its covered instrumentalities charted a path toward fiscal balance and economic growth without additional federal funding. The fiscal and structural reform measures from transforming the energy sector and modernizing labor laws to reducing government spending by 30% over 3 years, were ambitious and required unprecedented levels of effort by the government over the period of the plan. Hurricanes Irma and Maria have changed Puerto Rico's reality, but they have not altered the core purpose of PROMESA or the importance that they be fulfilled. In fact, they have underscored the importance of returning the island to economic vitality. Working closely with the government, it is essential that we use the process of revising fiscal plans to return to the PROMESA goals of fiscal responsibility, access to private capitals, and a sustainable economy. The process of thinking through the nature and scope of the changes of Puerto Rico's economy post-hurricane has already begun. Fiscal and structural reforms need to be revised in light of new baseline that results from this disaster. Two of the most important variables in the fiscal plan revision process are: one, the extent and distribution of damage that Puerto Rico suffered, and two, the type, timing, and magnitude of federal support, both immediate disaster relief and permanent infrastructure funds that Puerto Rico will receive. We understand we will have to have more clarity in each of these two variables later this year. In short, revisions to the existing fiscal plan are necessary due to four primary reasons. First, the government's ability to collect revenues has been significantly compromised as a result of the serious negative effect of infrastructure damage and population outflows on underlying economic activity. Second, recovery-related expenses are substantial. Not all will be reimbursed by federal aid, especially if local share requirements are not waived and are not currently accounted for in the existing fiscal plans. Third, many of the cost-saving measures built into the budget, the reduction of certain subsidies incorporated into the certified budget, for example, must be looked at with a fresh perspective given the demands of the recovery process. And fourth, the quote-unquote federal line will be significantly larger than in the existing fiscal plans. It is important to note that the revised plans will reflect any and all capital expenditures funded by FEMA or other federal recovery assistance. It will also involve any revisions to Medicaid funding. A careful, principled, transparent revision of the fiscal plan is essential. The revision process of the Commonwealth fiscal plan specifically is based on three components. One, revising macroeconomic driver effects on revenue and expenses. Two, adopting fiscal and structural reform schedules based on the recovery timeline and feasibility. And three, integrating recovery funds and reimbursement timing with a capital plan. During our 10th public meeting last week, we adopted the following general principles to evaluate the revisions to the fiscal plans of the Commonwealth and covered territorial instrumentalities and the degree